finally switched to Resolve, and if you're wondering how the M2 Pro Mac Mini handled 4K video editing on Resolve, keep watching to find out. What's going on, everyone? This is Matt. I put out a couple videos doing real-world tests for editing 4K footage on Final Cut and Premiere Pro with the base configuration of the M2 Pro Mac Mini. A few of you requested to do the same, but for Vinci Resolve. I personally never used Resolve until now, and for a couple of reasons. Reasons that I won't get into in this video, but if you're wondering which of the three editing platforms to use, I'm going to do a video comparing the three. So if you're interested in that, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it. Alright, let's get into how the M2 Pro Mac Mini handles Resolve. By the way, this is the free version of Resolve, not the studio, and as usual, working with 4K 10-bit 422 footage from my Sony a7 IV. We'll want to test two areas. One, overall performance when editing, so scrubbing and playback, especially as we throw clips in, then after we have the clips cut, and finally after color grading. The second test is export time. I'm still really new to Resolve, so bear with me if I'm doing anything inefficiently or even incorrectly. If I am, feel free to drop it in the comments so that you can help me out. So far, with my short time on Resolve, I don't even bother with the cutting page. I usually just go straight to the editing page and do all my cuts from there. I find that throwing all my clips into the timeline then cutting would help if my shots were linear and matched the sequence of my story or video. However, majority of the time my shots can be anywhere and I'll often rearrange clips here and there. I'm going to set my project settings and change everything to 4K. Let's import all the footage, throw in the music track, and I want to open with this specific part of this clip. We'll start it off with a fade in from black. I know I can usually transition in, but I usually prefer to create the transition myself so I can be a little bit more meticulous with how the transitions look. So I'll set the keyframes and have the opacity of the clip gradually increase. Most of the clips I shot in 4K 60 frames per second with the intention of slowing them down, since this video we wanted to go with a slow and soft feel to bring some elegance to it. At 60 frames per second with a 24 frames per second output, we can slow the footage down to 40%. If you're watching closely as I'm doing these, you'll see that scrubbing and playback is really smooth with no jitters at all. The M2 Pro Mini is handling this with no issues so far. I want to stabilize this clip, but first cut the specific part I'm using. Once I have what I like, I'll hit stabilize, and you can see it only took a couple of seconds to stabilize it, which is pretty insane. Next, I'm going to do a cross dissolve transition, but instead of throwing the cross dissolve transition in between the two clips, I'm going to layer them and create the transition myself. Again, because sometimes I prefer to manually do it, but also for the sake of seeing performance when we have a couple of layers. After making some adjustments to the transition and I play back, you can see that the hardware is still holding up perfectly. Okay, now that I have the full cut of the video, let's see how the M2 Pro Mini handles scrubbing and playback. I'm going to disable the snapping so we can scrub a little bit more freely. You can see that scrubbing and playing back is still really smooth. When I scrub fast though, I'm noticing very minor stutter. It's so minimal though, where it takes a slight second to catch up, pretty similar to how Premiere performed. It's nothing to really impact you. I'm not in a situation where if I hit play or scrub, there's no obvious lag from the machine and that it needs to catch up. It still plays and scrubs as needed. Next, let's start coloring and see how things keep up. I won't get too deep into grading for the sake of this video, enough to make a decent adjustment to the clip since we just want to see how the Mini performs. Again, no lags or jitters. I'm not waiting for the result after making the adjustments. Everything is instant with no hiccups. So now that I graded all the clips, we have the full cut of the video with a couple of layers for transitions. Most, if not all, the clips are slowed down to 40%. And there are also a few stabilized clips. Playback is smooth, no jitters at all. Scrubbing, there is slight stuttering. It just takes a fraction of a second to catch up, but it's so minor. I'd say when you're scrubbing and it's a very noticeable delay before it loads where your marker is, that's when it becomes an issue and would create an impact on your workflow. But this is minor, barely anything really. All right, lastly, let's export this and see how long it takes. This is a 1.5 minute video and we're going to export in 4K with pretty typical settings. Throw this into the render queue and hit render. You can see it's just eating through this timeline. All right, and it finished in 44 seconds. We've tested this M2 Pro Mac Mini on the 3 major editing softwares now and have seen this machine hold up with barely any issues when it comes to editing 4K footage. To be fair, they've been pretty basic edits though, with nothing fancy. I don't see an issue with it keeping up if you need it to do some heavier lifting. I'm currently in the process of getting a bit more used to Resolve and transitioning onto it. I want to compare all 3 and lay out the pros and cons of each to maybe help you out if you're either looking into which to learn or switch to. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions about the Mini or Resolve, and I'll do my best to get back to you. If you liked this video and thought it was helpful, give it a like. If you're looking for more video tips, tutorials, and reviews, subscribe to the channel so we can continue to build this community together. As always, thanks for watching and thanks for all the support. See you in the next one.